So hi everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Obviously, hopefully you have seen that this week there are two. So far there's going to be 2 episodes this week, and that's literally the only reason being is that me and Olivia have filmed the episode and we got on a tangent. We could not stop talking, and
we had more to say than we thought we did.
Yeah. So we're aware that a lot of you may not be interested in sitting down and watching us talk for an hour and a half to 2 hours about
I
monarchy.
wouldn't personally. I wouldn't want to watch this for an hour in one sitting. So
what we're going to do is we're going to split the 2 clips. So the first clip that you may have already seen, we will be discussing, or we will have discussed, some brief introductions to the royal family and what the monarchy meant for us, for example, growing up in Britain, and also about Prince Philip's recent death. And then this episode that you're about to watch is going to be us talking about Meghan and Harry, so Meghan and Harry's interview with Oprah and our opinion about how they are portrayed in the media. So we hope that you enjoy them.
Spoiler, it gets long.
Yeah, it's very long. So obviously no pressure. If it's something that you're not interested in, you don't have to watch, but I know that a lot of people have specifically asked us to talk about the interview. So if you want to watch both parts, obviously feel free to do so. If you only want to watch one and you want to watch the shorter one, for example, feel free. These are just to help you out, and this was just really, really requested. And like Olivia said before, we didn't realize we had such strong and so many opinions about the topic until we really got into the discussion. So sorry that it's long, but hopefully it's an interesting topic for you. So yeah, enjoy the podcast episode. Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we'll have a very exciting episode. I think it's the episode that everybody's been waiting for. Today we're going to talk about the monarchy. Everyone wants to know about our opinions and about the royal family. So we're going to talk a little bit about the monarchy, about the royal family, all of that. British patriarchism is what I was going for. That's a word, right?
I guess it's patriotism.
Patriotism, there's the one. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I think everybody's very excited for this one. I do want to start the podcast episode by saying that being British does not inherently mean that you just know about the royal family. Like we are not experts on the royal family. We have a very basic understanding of the royal family. You're not just born with this knowledge and this bank of all of the different members of the royal family and what they all do and all their names, and that doesn't happen.
And it's not something that's taught in school.
No.
You don't have lessons on the monarchy, like learning all of the different kings and queens and things.
No.
The only reason that every single British child or person from our generation knows all of the kings and queens is because of a TV show called Horrible Histories.
Yeah,
the kids' TV show that was on when we were like about 10, that kind of age, and they did like history through fun sketches and songs, and they did a song that listed every single king and queen. And so weirdly, most people our age can name every single king and queen in order, but that's because of this program, not because of the curriculum at school.
I'm actually the exception to that. I do not know that at all.
You need to learn.
I shouldn't. I should.
I will never ever forget it. It's so ingrained in my mind. So yeah, I can give you any. I have to run through the whole song in my head.
Go on.
I can't jump in.
We want a rendition. I can see the comments flooded in. We want to hear Olivia's rendition of the song.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll leave a clip. Link
1,000 years ago. Oh yeah, I will put it in the link.
We'll put it in a link song, so you can have a listen to it if you want to. But yeah, I just wanted to start that off because I feel like it's like an afternoon tea situation where I feel like everybody assumes we either love the monarchy or that we know everything about it. That's really not true. So today we kind of really just want to give you a very, very brief overview of like some of the members of the royal family, really just the most important ones. We will tell you who they all are. Liv has a beautiful chart that she's going to share the screen for, so you can have a little look at some of them, but not all of them are really relevant to what we're going to talk about today.
We're going to kind of do the monarchy through the eyes of like 2 recent events. And
also try to intertwine a little bit of our personal experience with that as well, because I think it's very naive to assume that growing up in Britain, growing up in England means you have no connection to the monarchy, because, you know, it is in our culture, it is part of our society. And there's definitely moments from my childhood, I don't know if you feel the same, where I remember a very strong, a very big major event happening in the royal family, and everybody sort of feels very patriotic. And it's kind of, I remember being, you know, watching things like Kate and William's wedding, the royal weddings, or the royal baby, you know, when it was sort of like a Lion King moment where they come out on the balcony with the baby and they're like, here you are, Britain, this is the new royal baby, and all of those sorts of things. And for those events, I remember me and my family would all get together. I would be in like a little Union Jack dress, and the Union Jack is the very stereotypical Great Britain flag that you've seen, the blue, white and red crossy thing, that's called a Union Jack. We would be in red, white and blue with little bows in our hair and all that sort of thing, and you would watch it on TV and have maybe like a little afternoon tea with little biscuits and scones, have a very British sort of gathering to celebrate it. But other than that, I don't think the monarchy has massively influenced my childhood, I would say.
I think, personally, from what I associate with monarchy, is these like big events that happen within the monarchy are obviously huge events in the UK. So if you know the royal wedding, it's declared a bank holiday, so it's a national holiday, so most people are off work and things like that, and it's when everyone almost takes a step back in time and has things like street parties, which are synonymous with VE Day. And so it's all these, like, you'll have big events in your community where everyone's doing like picnics and say these street parties and things together. And so that's to me, say what I remember, say days like that for the royal wedding, or for I was trying to work out what jubilee it was 10 years ago, but the Queen's Diamond Jubilee was something when like we just started school, so it would have been 60 years, because her 70th jubilee, which is a platinum jubilee, is in 2022.
What is a jubilee? Just celebrates how long she's been
jubilee,
in
so
monarch.
So it's like every 10 years, like with a wedding anniversary.
Okay.
It's exactly the same names, I think, as wedding anniversaries, like silver, golden, platinum, diamond, sapphire, exactly like we call wedding anniversaries.
Because basically these names in English, so if you say someone's silver wedding anniversary or silver jubilee, that silver is a certain amount of years.
I think it's exactly the same in German, so I had to look up golden and wedding anniversary in German. I think it was just exactly the same.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so everyone's kind of praying that the Queen makes it till the Jubilee in 2022, because again, that'll just be a huge national event. You know, everyone, it'll be like a national holiday, and I think, of course, not everyone in the UK supports the monarchy, and there are, especially amongst like our generation, there's definitely sort of increasing anti-monarchy sentiments, but you know, I think it's quite difficult to not feel sort of this real sense of community and celebration on those days, like a jubilee or a royal wedding, because everyone just comes together in a way that you don't have really for any other event, because it's almost the one thing that unites everyone in the country. Say, as much as you have holidays like Christmas, they're not for everyone, whereas something like I say a national holiday because of a royal event is something that is for everyone.
And you know when else I get that sort of strong sense of unity, because I think, like we say, these events make me feel very patriotic, even though I'm not a massive supporter of the monarchy. I don't hate the monarchy either, it just kind of exists in my head, and these events are really when I'm aware of them. But I think even when I go to London, like London's not a place that I particularly love. I've been a lot of times, and I think it's just a city at the end of the day, and because I'm British, maybe the novelty of London is lost on me a bit, but I think, like, obviously recently I went down, before I came here, I had to go and get an Austrian visa to be allowed to work in the country, and the embassy that I had to go to was in London, so I went down, but walking around, like even seeing Buckingham Palace or walking around London does give me that sort of sense of patriotism, because it's like, you know, this is my country, this is the epicenter, I suppose, isn't it? It's like the main part. This is what a lot of people think our country is, and I love going there and seeing all the very stereotypical things. But so I think maybe best thing to do now is, I reckon, get your picture up and we can have a little.
I will get my picture up. So we'll do a quick overview of the current.
And it's going to be very quick, because there's so many of them, and I don't know any. Well, somebody probably will, but I don't know anybody who could name every member of the royal family. And there are definitely people that yeah,
it's
definitely
like some
will.
people have a serious hobby, yeah, but for a lot of people will know sort of like the key members, and then there's sort of all the more extended family that sort of is just growing and growing and growing.
I think it's commonly known that, like, I think this is just a very obvious fact, is that, like, so obviously the Queen is our most important member of the royal family. She is the person who runs our country, and you did have Prince Philip, which we're going to talk about in a bit, and then I think most people then know, like, William and all of those, because they're the next heirs. So it's typically the heirs are the most well known. So here's a diagram. Exactly. Do you want to talk through it, or do you want
I'll talk us through in proper teaching style.
Also, can I just say before we start, so each royal family, each royal has their actual name and also typically a title. So you can see, for example, Prince Philip at the top, he is also called the Duke of Edinburgh. So each person typically will have a title and a name, just as a bit
100%, yeah. Cannot I don't understand the different titles, like they're all historical, that it's always like the heir to the throne is always the Prince of Wales, and that's the only one I know. All the others are also so
I didn't know that.
as soon as the heir is always the Prince of Wales. So
when Charles dies, William will be the Prince of Wales.
William becomes Prince of Wales, and then I don't know who then becomes the Duke of Cambridge. I don't know where it then all passes down.
Oh wait, sorry, I just said when Charles dies, William will be the Prince of Wales. That's incorrect.
When Charles becomes king.
Yeah, when Charles is king, then William will be Prince of Wales, because when
Charles
dies, William will be the king.
Yeah. That's a good correction. But no, the majority of my knowledge genuinely my knowledge of the majority of my knowledge of the British
the purple line
family. Yeah, but it's come from The Crown, a TV series I'm sure most of you have heard of that are watching, especially for instance in the older classes.
We've just started watching it together.
So Amber I've never seen it. I've been a devoted fan of it since it came out, because I think it's such a fantastically done series, not just because of the way it shows the royal family. Obviously it's based on truth, it's not a documentary, it is a drama series, it's not true word for word, but it sort of shows the life of the Queen from when she's a princess, and then her father passes away, then she becomes queen at quite an early age. It sort of shows the British monarchy through Queen Elizabeth II's reign, but with all the various important sort of points in history up until like from the 1950s to now, and that's just a period of history I actually know very, very little about. Like it's and also it's very, very interesting watching it as a family. So like we suddenly got to a point where my parents were like, yep, I remember this happening, I remember that happening, and it just sort of it's I always don't know how to describe it. Like I know I'm watching a drama, it's not a documentary, but you still have this sort of feeling of, oh wow, this particular event happened,
I was going to say it's obviously based on truth. They can't talk about events that didn't actually happen, because they're using real people as well, like real characters, like
but obviously it's all the conversations the Queen. And things that are
but I think that's definitely a good point to bring up, because obviously we're only going to talk for maybe another half hour, so it's, if you want a good I mean, it's going to take time because the episodes are long, maybe they're quite hard to understand, but I know that on Netflix they do have the audio and subtitles in German. If you are interested, I would listen to it in English because the accents are a whole part of the TV show, but maybe put the German subtitles on if you don't understand the language, but that's really good if you want more in-depth, because we're not going to give you the in-depth
absolutely,
simply because
it's just a really fantastic series. But so you've got Queen Elizabeth and her recently deceased husband Philip, who's the Duke of Edinburgh. It's really a stereotypical, like if you're trying to do an imitation of the Queen, she says the word Philip, or the name Philip, in a way that no one else can say. She just says it it's really short, and so it's a very, like if anyone's doing an impression of the Queen, they'll always try and say Philip in the way that she says it. But yes, the Queen and Prince Philip have 4 children. Charles, obviously next in line to the throne, and then there's Princess Anne, and then Andrew and Edward.
Important to note that going from this side, from left to right, is the oldest to youngest. So Charles is the oldest, then Anne, then Andrew, then Edward.
And then I say obviously this is how the royal family then starts growing, because all of these 4 have married and have children, and they now will have children as well.
Interesting, Anne and Charles also had 2 partners.
Twice. I didn't know that Princess Anne had been married twice.
No, me either.
Which is intriguing. Yeah. And so there's I don't know I've no idea how well known these other names would be, but Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie are quite well known.
You know, my mum
why they're particularly well known.
Well, my mum served Princess Eugenie at work once. My mum works in a retail store and sold Princess Eugenie an outfit that she wore to some sort of royal occasion, I think my mum did.
That's a proper claim to fame.
That's pretty cool, right? And I didn't realise until I did this with one of the teachers the other day in a class, and I was talking briefly, like very, very quickly, about certain members of the royal family, and I didn't realise that she was Andrew's daughter, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I thought she was just like a cousin or like someone who wasn't really important, but really she's pretty important. Yeah, she's pretty important.
Yeah, as I say, any of the
I've never heard of Lady Louise, Windsor or James.
No, they're much younger though. So Charles and Anne are much older. If you watch The Crown, Charles and Anne were sort of born not long after one another. Anne was born not long after Charles, and then there's quite a big gap, and then you have Andrew and Edward, and say Andrew's children are much older, and then Edward and Sophie's children, like they're names that I know of, but you never see them. They are without, like in this, you never ever see. I'm assuming it is Prince, as in then even the name Prince and Edward doesn't sort of mean anything to me.
No.
So they've clearly just spent most of their life out of the public eye, and say their children are younger, whereas Beatrice and Eugenie are pretty well known. I know Zara Tyndall much more than I know their other child, Peter.
I don't recognise either of those, honestly. But this is the side of the royal family that when we say are less known, these are not the important ones. So if you're going to remember anyone from the royal family, you want to follow that purple line, and that purple line is what's called the immediate line of succession, which means basically when Queen Elizabeth dies, follow the purple line, that's the next sovereign. Then when Charles dies, goes to William. When William dies, it goes to Prince George. Because I'm not sure how much you know about the royal family, but what typically happens is when it's called the sovereign or the monarch dies, so the king or the queen at that time, their firstborn child gets it, and then their first child gets it, for example. So, and
I don't know what point this changed, because obviously, this is a monarchy that goes back thousands, like to the very first king in the year. I think it was 1066, but either way, we're looking at 1,000 years. I can't remember at what point it changed that if the firstborn is female, they will still be the first in line. I think that's quite a recent change, because obviously it's not a problem at the moment, because it just so happens that the firstborns have been sons, and obviously that's a ridiculous rule now, but I think it's almost something that hadn't needed to be changed because it wasn't a concern. And I can just remember it being a topic in the media when William and Kate were having their first child, and people were saying, well, obviously if it's a girl, the girl will become queen first. But I genuinely think it was at that point they had to kind of like find the book and change the rule, because it was like it just hadn't needed to be changed.
I've also thought of a really interesting point that we only learned about the other day, didn't we? That I think is quite important to mention. So it only currently stands for Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, because she's the queen, and the rest of them, like we've said, are male. But what's really quite interesting is, I can't remember the exact names, but I know that you're given the title consort, aren't you, when you are married to the sovereign? So Philip is what's known as a prince consort. So you might be confused, if she's the queen, why is he a prince? Why is he not the king? And the reason for this is that in our society, I don't even know what you would call it, but for royals, if our society bases more value on kings than they do queens, and Queen Elizabeth was born into royalty. Her father was the king, so she is blood, like she is in line she is the queen because of blood, whereas Prince Philip married into the royal family, so because he wasn't by blood a royal, if he is titled king when she is titled queen, he would technically outrank her. because it's her birthright. She is a queen, and he has to be a prince consort in order to not outrank her, to show that she is actually the one who is in charge, I suppose. Whereas it doesn't really matter for the next ones. So when Charles becomes king, Camilla will be Queen Camilla. Same with William, it'll be King William and Queen Kate as well. But I just think that's quite an interesting point, because I was really confused about that as well. And it's a rule that I'm wondering whether they all started like, I'm sure that's another like thing that will suddenly like become a big deal in the press, like when we do suddenly have another king and queen again, because it is ultimately a sexist rule, that it's this idea that a king outranks a queen. So you will have let's say if you've got a king who's the actual heir and they marry a woman, they will be queen automatically. It's an outdated rule, so I'm intrigued to see whether that would change, especially when we get down to like Will and Kate. I can't remember the word. There's another word for like, so there's the consort, who is somebody who's married into royalty, and there's a name for someone, I think it begins with an R, that is for the name of the sovereign or monarch or whoever, who is blood, like who is allowed to be who is the queen by blood. Is it like the one that's like, it's Regina? Because I'm guessing that's what you mean, because it's like because it's that's what's on our coins and things. But so I'll stop sharing this now. We've had a look, but so these are the people we're talking about. We've mentioned Will and Kate. They're just always referred to as Will and Kate, even though what's also William, Duke of Cambridge, and Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge. What's also maybe interesting to note is that if you know anything about royal families, our royal family, you may have heard of Charles and Diana before. This was obviously a big thing. Princess Diana was Charles's first wife, and unfortunately she died in a car accident. How was it, like 1997? So she died quite a while ago in a car accident. But William and Harry are Princess Diana and Charles's children. They are not Charles and Camilla's children. Just an important little piece of information to know potentially as well. So I think now that we've given you a little bit of a brief overview of some members of the royal family, I think it's really important to kind of address the recent news that we got. When was it, on Friday, that Prince Charles, husband, has unfortunately passed away. Prince Philip, not Charles. Prince Philip has unfortunately passed away on Friday. Do you know what it was from? I can't remember what he died from. Well, he's been no, they've not announced specifically, but he's been in and out of hospital for the past years. He's 99 years of age, so they've not impressive explicitly what it was he's died of. I always find it really sad when someone makes it to 99, and also it's just a little thing people talk about. So when you turn 100 in the UK, you get a birthday card from the Queen. Saddest thing. And so it's obviously a serious, like my great grandpa got to 100, so I remember seeing his card from the Queen. She doesn't hand sign it, it's printed, but because a fair few people make it to 100. But everyone always thought, it's going to be really funny that he would get like this official card from the Queen, as well as, I'm assuming, she would give him a birthday card, but he'd also qualify for the, you've turned 100, you get a card from the Queen. This is what I saw. I can't remember what it was on. Was it on like, I think it was a tweet, but I don't have Twitter, so it'd just come up in like a news article or on Instagram or something. And someone had said, like, the saddest thing about this whole thing is he never got his card from the Queen. And I was like, what, that is true. That's very sad. Because as well, his birthday was in like June. Was it June? Yeah, he was really not far off. We looked up, it's in summer. He's so close to 100. And I think that would have been a huge national event, I reckon. I don't know what maybe was planned for it, but I reckon that would have been a big national. Well, you were saying as well, so obviously because of COVID, funerals in general are kind of scaled down. They're not like they would be, and I assume since they're royals and they have extravagant weddings and extravagant all of the like births for their kids and all of this sort of stuff, that they would have also extravagant like state funerals, they're called, aren't they? And you were telling me the other day, weren't you, that Philip didn't want one of those. Like, he didn't want a state funeral, he just wanted something simple and small. And people think it's really like sweet and ironic that even though COVID's happening, he actually did get his wish and he didn't have to have a big funeral and he didn't have to have this fancy occasion because he wasn't allowed it anyway. So has the funeral already been? But so
No, so the funeral's on Saturday,
Okay.
because I was reading about the details of it, and it's just happening at Windsor Castle. So also there are numerous royal residences. They don't just have Buckingham Palace, and Windsor Castle is where the Queen and Prince Philip have been throughout the whole of the coronavirus period, pretty much. It was almost like a sanctuary, like a safety place to get them sort of away from everyone.
Yeah.
Obviously, considering their age,
They're very old. Yeah.
And so it's always there. I think it's essentially going to be like a procession around Windsor Castle, and then obviously the various military sort of groups will line that route, and then it will just be a chapel service for the immediate family and any heads of state that have been invited. But so like the way that it's been sort of announced by Buckingham Palace have said like two things. That you get the impression that, especially if you watch The Crown, like Prince Philip was quite a particular character, and he liked to have he had his own opinions on lots of things, and apparently like Buckingham Palace has sort of said that they think he would find it quite amusing that decades of planning would have gone into his state funeral. Like this is not something they plan. This has been, you know, a file somewhere in the government for like decades, as what happens when Prince Philip dies, and that's had to go completely out the window because of coronavirus. And apparently that's something he would have found very funny, that, you know, so much work's gone into something
And he didn't even have
had to change. And say the fact that apparently it was his wish to have a sort of, say, a small quiet family affair, as opposed to having, say, a state funeral means procession all throughout London with thousands, if not millions, of people all there, and that's the sort of thing that I think, I'm assuming, like the last one I can think of is Winston Churchill. I don't know if anyone's had a state funeral since Winston Churchill passed away, and because I don't think there's been any other high profile. Obviously Diana, that's an obvious one, Princess Diana.
Did Diana die after Churchill? I don't really know much about Churchill.
Yeah, because Churchill was think of when we started watching The Crown, he was an old man then. So
yeah, true.
He
Let me have a little
look,
see if
I'm assuming Diana had, if not a full state funeral, still a very, very public funeral, but instead, so it's going to be televised on Saturday. Obviously, I don't think the exact service will be, but the procession and everything will be.
She did not have a state funeral. Sorry, she did not have a state funeral. She had a royal ceremonial funeral, according to the
I was going to say, to be fair, she wasn't. I don't know what the difference in terminology is.
She wasn't massively bothered about the royal family, though, was she?
No, but I was actually just thinking, to be fair, she probably wouldn't have qualified for a state funeral in that sense, because she was no longer part of the royal family, but being such a huge public figure, I know she had a big public funeral. I just didn't know exactly what kind.
And I think this is one of those moments that I was talking about before, where like, because in my mind, I think a lot of people assume, because we're British, that we either love the monarchy or we hate the monarchy. Like you have to have a strong opinion. And we've discussed this before, and we both believe that we don't hate the monarchy, we don't love them, they just exist. They're just there, we don't really notice them. But it's events like this, you know, when because we were sat at Olivia's house when we realised that Prince Philip had died. And I was like, oh my gosh, oh no, that's so sad. And like, it's moments like that where you do feel a sense of like, oh, this is such a event for Britain, and you feel awful for the Queen. And like, we both really like the Queen, like we just think she's so sweet. Not that we've ever personally met her, but you know, like
I was going to say about the Queen nurses, you know, we've said a little bit about, you know, that there's obviously people of all extremes, the people who are absolutely crazy about the monarchy and those who think it should be abolished and think that very, very strongly. But I think it's very difficult to not respect the Queen. And I just would like, from sort of people that I know, even people that I feel very strongly against the monarchy, still feel this sort of feeling of, say, pride and respect towards the Queen, because I think it's quite impossible to not admire a woman who's achieved what she has achieved. And so especially I think the Crown has really helped that for people perhaps of our generation who didn't really know that much about the Queen. Like, it's most of like people of our grandparents' age, it's quite like sort of stereotypical that your grandparents, especially like your grandmother, will be the biggest royal fan in any family, just because they've grown up with the Queen. They're sort of on that similar age. But I think the Crown, as in the Netflix series, has done a lot for sort of developing this respect in our generation who perhaps didn't know that much about the Queen, but to actually see the sort of things she's been through. You know, she came to the throne as a young woman into a government that was run, a government that's run by old white men who did not think she was capable, and she absolutely owned it. So I think everyone generally has a lot of respect for the Queen. And as I do not know what will happen when she passes away, because
well, this is what we were talking about the other day, and one thing that like it does make me really sad is, you know, like, so we're 2021, for my entire 21 years on this planet, I have only known the Queen of England. I have never known the King of England.
In the UK will be the same. Like, there aren't that many people
she has ruled
who are older than the Queen.
Because she's ruled for like 68 years. Yeah, so she has been the Queen for such a long period of time. And we were talking about this the other day whilst watching an episode of The Crown, is that when Queen Elizabeth II dies, me and Olivia will most likely never see another Queen for our country until,
unless something really drastic happens. You know, we've got
because
Charles, then William, then George.
Charlotte's the next woman in line at the moment, but as far as I'm aware, right? But once if George has any children at all, they automatically push Charlotte down. So, for example, if if George had 3 children before whilst he was king, for example, then it would obviously go to his first one, second born, however many before it gets to Charlotte. So unless he has daughters, again, it's kings. So me and Olivia, once Queen Elizabeth dies, we will probably die never having another queen for our country, unless something very drastic happens. And
we go through a lot of members of the royal family in a short space of time. It is a strange. So our national anthem changes depending on whether you have a king or a queen. And that's something that I've almost not really appreciated. You know, to sing "God Save the King" is completely alien to me. It's just all those little things that
it would be very bizarre for me to say like, oh yeah, you know, the King of England, like, no, the Queen of England, like, it's just a weird thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening.